Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. Inauguration Day show, end of the Trump president show, crazy show. What do we have, Krystal?
Yeah, it is actually, we were just talking about, it actually does feel really weird that Trump is leaving and Biden is coming into office. I know this is a day you've long been awaiting, Saagar, to get back to brunch, back to normal. Deep anticipation across all of mainstream media. We've got some great guests in the show. We got Brianna Joy Gray on to talk about her expectations for the Biden administration. We've got Ken Klippenstein on to talk about the security situation and what it means going forward. But we do want to start with Inauguration Day and what we can expect on day one of the Biden presidency.
That's right. So while the rest of the networks are covering all the pomp and the circumstance, we're actually going to bring you some of the substance. We are going right back to 2015, folks. So here's a list of all the executive orders. We got the official one from the Biden team. We could see they're going to stop wall construction, end the travel ban, rejoin Paris, Keystone, talking about the U.S. Census. You've got the list right there in front of you, regulatory action, etc. What they're basically doing is turning the clock back on anything that Trump undid of the Obama administration. And this is always the problem, which is when you govern now by executive order, which is that Trump came in, undid some Obama stuff. Now Biden will come in, he'll undo the Trump stuff, reset it back, the clock. And that's essentially where we are right now. And you can actually see this while Biden is setting the clock back and healing, Democratic nature on his side. The Republicans are healing the nature on their side as well. Saw this all during the confirmation hearings yesterday. This is amazing. Let's throw up some of these tweets that a journalist observed. Chuck Grassley started Janet Yellen's hearing by warning about tax increases on individuals and businesses. And then let's throw the next one up there. Senator John Thune and others. You can see John Thune is expressing concerns about the debt. And then Tim Scott got into a back and forth with Janet Yellen about $15 hour minimum wage. Let's hear what he had to say.
That has been presented to us is a package that focuses on some priorities that I think will actually hurt our economy as much as it would improve our economy. One in particular is the issue of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I will say that I've been talking to businesses around the country and specifically at home. The one thing that even the Congressional Budget Office recognizes is that by increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour, it could shutter somewhere around 3.7 million jobs on the high end, a minimum of 1.3 million jobs in our economy. And the last thing this economy needs as we attempt to recover is a loss of 1.3 to 3.7 million jobs.
What do you think, Krystal? It's oddly comforting to be right back in 2015. It's just amazing. This is the same Republican Party after Trump won the state of Florida by more points than anyone has won it in 20 years on the same day that they passed a $15 per hour minimum wage. But this is what you hear in the chamber during Janet Yellen's confirmation hearing. It's literally like nothing has changed in the last 5 years.
You can just feel that warmed over zombie Reaganism just washing over you like a warm bath, taking you right back to where we started. Look, this is the thing with Trump. He could have made his presidency about anything. He could have made it about policy, could have made it about changing the economic orthodoxy within the Republican Party, but he didn't. Mm-hmm. He decided to make it about stop the steal and personal loyalty to him. So there's no reason for any of these people who these talking points just fall out of their mouth without them even thinking about it. They've been so schooled and indoctrinated in this trickle down Reaganomics type of thinking that, the minute he's gone, and honestly, I mean, the whole time he was there too, it's not like they really changed or shifted on their economic talking points. They just started using the words working class more often to kind of whitewash their normal economic orthodoxy. So, yep, we're back to the standard issue battles of the past. And on the specific issue of $15 minimum wage, I think it's really important to point out that $15 minimum wage is more popular than either Republicans or Democrats.
Yeah, of course it is.
It's way more popular with the American people than either of these parties. We saw this super clearly in Florida this year, where Trump won and $15 minimum wage passed overwhelmingly with 60-some% of the population. So Republicans anxious to right away get themselves on the wrong side of a really popular issue at a time when Americans are deeply concerned about jobs and wages and providing for their families.
it's amazing when you can see. I was watching parts of the hearing, just, clock in. I'm like, okay, what are they actually going to ask? Every once in a while, there'd be a decent question about China. But, even Tim Scott, he's like, do you agree, Miss Yellen, that the minimum wage would be a job killer? It took me right back to all those Tea Party speeches on the House floor, being this job killing bill. And it's like, if you say something 3 times over, number one, doesn't make it true. Number two, you still lost all those elections. It's like they've learned absolutely nothing in terms of their discourse. And on the other side, this is something you spotted, which I love, is that nature is healing with the Biden administration. We have the executive orders, obviously, but this was during the confirmation hearing of Anthony Blinken when he was asked by Senator Rubio about, basically a coup in Venezuela and whether he supported it. Here's what he had to say.
I very much agree with you, Senator. First of all, with regard to a number of the steps that were taken toward Venezuela in recent years, including recognizing Mr. Guaido, recognizing the National Assembly as the only democratically elected institution in Venezuela, seeking to increase pressure on the regime led by a brutal dictator in Maduro, as well as to try to work with some of our allies and partners. The hard part is that for all of those efforts, which I support, we obviously have not gotten the results that we need. And one of the things I would really welcome doing, if confirmed, is to come and talk some of that through with you and with others on this committee, because we need an effective policy that can restore Venezuela to democracy, starting with free and fair elections.
There we go, Krystal. We're right back. As we said here, this is what back to normal actually looks like. So I hope everybody can get used to it.
Anytime you hear the words restore democracy, you should be filled with absolute terror and revulsion. I mean, and look, this is what we saw even during the Trump administration. This was like, again, part of the bipartisan consensus was around, hey, let's go ahead and work on fomenting this coup in Venezuela and backing this guy who has no claim on power. Juan Guaido was almost uniformly supported. There were very few dissenters. There were only a few dissenters on the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. So it's not a surprise, but it still is deeply disheartening to hear those, neocon talking points just tumbling straight out of the mouth of Tony Blinken, who, of course, is up for Secretary of State. And listen, I mean, how do I feel on this day? I ultimately ended up voting for Joe Biden, and I'm glad that he's there over Donald Trump. And I don't think that they're equivalent. I support, the rollback of the executive actions. I support the direction that he's going in with relief. But ultimately, it's not an answer. And so when you look at the cable news coverage, and we're actually going to do a segment looking at some of the cable news coverage, which is so embarrassing and fawning and disgusting, and CNN with their Kamala Harris making history, hagiography that they ran over the weekend, there seems to be, this belief that a Biden administration is somehow a real solution, right? That this is really going to heal the country and give people what they need and give working class people a shot and restore the middle class. I mean, I don't even think they really talk about that part, but that's an underlying assumption is like, okay, we got the bad orange man out and now everything's going to be cool and it's going to be great and we all should feel wonderful and amazing. But if you look at what's actually being proposed, and if you look at the perspective and the ideology that's actually being espoused here, it's very standard neoliberal, very standard sort of like conventional imperialist foreign policy. It doesn't take a genius to see that this doesn't actually lead you to the promised land. It leads you to exactly where we've been. There's a reason that we ended up with Donald Trump in the White House. There's a reason why we ended up with a majority of Americans saying that the thing that they're most terrified of is their fellow Americans. There's a reason why we have the massive inequality and the plutocracy and the corporate control that we have in this country. And Joe Biden is a very integral part of that reason. So anyone who feels like, okay, it's all going to be good and great now, and sure, breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief that the bad orange man is gone, but don't fool yourself that this is any type of a real solution that is going to lead us to a truly better place as a country.
I think that's really well said. And look, I wish Joe Biden the best. I've said that repeatedly here. I genuinely want him to succeed. I think he has a chance to actually be one of the most popular presidents of my lifetime by doing the bare minimum, by just passing $2,000 check or $1,400 checks and a vaccine and distributing a vaccine. If he distributes 100 million doses, I think he'll have 75% approval. But in 2022, we're all going to wake up. People are going to party a lot and everyone's going to try and forget. But something is still happening beneath the surface within this country that caused people to riot in the streets twice this year during lockdown, so much more, the economic inequality. 1/6 of our restaurant stock is gone. We've seen 30 million Americans now on like perma unemployment. What are we going to do about that? And eventually the bill comes due. And you can see here that with rolling back things to 2015, both in foreign policy, both upon the opposition in terms of the Republican Party and how they're considering things, nobody in Washington has learned a damn thing. To the extent that they have learned anything, it's to be marginally better rhetorically on China. We'll see how Joe Biden and his administration does whenever it actually comes to the WTO, whenever it comes to our trading relationship with that country and more. But rhetoric is not going to solve the actual problems we have. And I just think that's, we should bear that in mind when we're going to hear a lot of healing rhetoric and more. Look, rhetoric does matter. We learned that with Trump. I used to be one of those people like, forget it. No, I think with the Capitol riots, we can understand that quite clearly. The rhetoric and the way that a president talks matters. But Joe Biden is only really obsessed with the former and not with the latter of actually doing anything to see why that rhetoric lands in the first place. And I pray, I hope that he will realize that. I want him to be successful, but we have to be skeptical and critical, unlike a lot of the rest of the news media, as we continue in the next 4 years.
Indeed, and we will do exactly that, and we will have more Rising for you after this.